Hey guys, it's Chase here. Today marks the start of a new series on my channel, where I'm going to be giving my in-depth thoughts on each of the 5 dually types in Splatoon 2. As a dually specialist myself, I naturally have a lot of opinions about each of these weapons. I've given my partial opinions here and there on my channel before, but I think it's time that I finally make videos about each one. So, let's get started. We're going to be going in the order of when each dually was released, so of course, we have to discuss Splat Dualies first. Now, I'm just going to be blunt with you guys. I don't like this weapon. Like at all. It's easily my least favorite of the 5 dually types. The dodge rolls feel incredibly slow, its range isn't anything special, and it has horrible ink consumption. Plus, this thing just gets wrecked by MPU damage up weapons. Now, as you guys probably know, MPU damage up weapons are something that all dualies struggle with to some degree. But due to the Splat Dualies' incredibly slow roll speed, it suffers the most in my opinion. So those are the negatives, but that doesn't mean that this weapon doesn't have any positives. It can paint decently, and it's probably the most accurate dually in spread mode. But I think the best thing about the Splat Dualie line are its kits. All 3 variants have pretty good subs and specials. The N-Parry Splat Dualies have Curling Bomb, which helps a ton with mobility, and it has Inkjet, which can be used to challenge longer ranged weapons that Splat Dualies would normally have a hard time fighting. The Kenta Splat Dualies have Suction Bomb, which is just an all-around great sub-weapon, and Baller can help you escape bad situations and sometimes get some cheesy zone caps. But right now, I think the best of the 3 variants is actually the vanilla Splat Dualies. Burst Bomb is another great sub-weapon, as it's great for breaking ink armor, and it can be thrown pretty far to make up for Splat Dualies' mediocre range. Tenta missiles are a top tier special currently, as they're great for forcing enemies to move and creating a gateway for your team to push in. If the main weapon was just a little bit better, I could see this variant actually being used in high level play. So yeah, I don't think this weapon is very good. But what would make it better? Well, if they were to ever buff these things again, I would undo the nerf it received in the 4.4.0 update, which reduced the size of its bullets in spread mode. This would make the weapon more accurate overall, which I think it can really benefit from. What I'm about to say next might sound crazy, but I would honestly like to see them remove the end lag from a dodge roll entirely, similar to the Dualie Squelchers. Now hold on, because I know that you're probably thinking that this would be extremely OP and that I'm crazy. But just think about it. Would it really make the weapon broken? I don't think so. I mean, yes, it would make it a heck of a lot better, but I don't think that this would suddenly make the weapon top tier. It would basically just play like a shorter ranged version of the Dualie Squelchers, with more accuracy and a better fire rate. It would also give it more mobility options, which I think is one of its biggest weaknesses. It would still have the same issues that it has currently: lackluster range, poor ink consumption, and susceptibility to MPU damage up weapons. It would just have more options when it comes to fights, which I think it can really benefit from. All in all though, my point is that Splat Dualies need some kind of buff in order to be viable again, because right now, there are so many better things that you can use. Oh, the Dapple Dualies. What a polarizing weapon. These have the shortest range of any dually, but also output the highest damage per second. In fact, it's the 2nd fastest killing weapon in the entire game, just narrowly being edged out by the Ballpoint Splatling's close range firing mode. Given my previous complaints about the Splat Dualies, you would think that I would say that Dapples are even worse, since they barely have any range. But I actually don't think this is the case. While Dapples do indeed have awful range, they have a variety of perks that, in my opinion, give them more of a niche than Splat Dualies. As I said before, Dapples are one of the fastest killing weapons in the game. If you combine this with the fact that it also has the quickest dodge roll of any dually, you can basically sneak up on someone and vaporize them before they even have the chance to react. Now, sneaking up on someone is a lot easier said than done, but if you play enough with the weapon, you'll learn some ways to adapt. Ninja Squid can also help with this. Dapple Dualies are also considered a lightweight weapon, which gives the weapon a few extra speed perks that none of the other dualies possess. The last perk that I want to go over is just how well this weapon deals with non-player objects. It obliterates things such as splash walls, Booyah Bomb armors, and the Rainmaker shield, and that's without running Object Shredder. If you do have Object Shredder equipped, it's almost comedic how fast it can vaporize non-player objects. This is why I would say that Dapple's best mode in the game is Rainmaker, since you can always have the upper hand with popping the Rainmaker shield, and it's overall just a very fast weapon, which Rainmaker tends to reward. But now, let's get into the negatives of this weapon. First, of course, is its very abysmal range. It's one of the worst in the game, even being outranged by things like the Splattershot Jr. and Clash Blaster. While you can play stealthily and swiftly to potentially work around it, it's still incredibly annoying to deal with, and it's the main reason why Dapple Dualies aren't really played at a competitive level. None of the Dapple Dualies kits are all that great either. I think the best of the three are actually the vanilla Dapples, since beacons suit the weapon well, and Suction Bomb Rush is just solid on every mode, making it a pretty good supportive weapon that can also play aggressive. The Dapple Dualies Nouveau kit isn't horrible, but it's not great either. Inkstorm is neither good nor bad. It's a mid-tier special, but it's still pretty solid. What's not solid is Toxic Mist, as this sub-weapon doesn't paint anything. It can still be useful in certain situations, such as blocking off a certain area or preventing someone from escaping, but overall, it's one of the worst subs in the game, and it doesn't do very much for Dapples. The clear Dapple Dualies are the only one of the three kits that actually have a sub-weapon that can inflict damage, but unfortunately, it's still not a real bomb, which I think Dapples would really benefit from. However, the Torpedo is nice and can give you a way to distract longer range weapons that Dapples would normally have no business fighting. Plus, you can't forget about rolling torpedoes, which honestly might be more effective than throwing them normally. Clear Dapples are the only torpedo weapon that can get the Splashdown combo, where right after landing a Splashdown, you can just roll a torpedo at an opponent who is partially damaged by the Splashdown to finish them off. While this combo is great, it doesn't change the fact that Splashdown sucks. The worst special in the game by far, and that alone makes the Clear Dapples the worst of the three kits in my opinion. So let's conclude. How do I really feel about Dapple Dualies? Do I think they're good? Well, no, not really. But I do think they're a lot better than people give them credit for. Dapples are often considered to be the worst dually, but I just don't agree with this. Sure, they have terrible range, but that's pretty much its only big downfall. By just playing smart, this can be worked around, most of the time. But the Dapple Dualies just have so many useful perks that the normal Splat Dualies lack, which is why I would personally say that Dapple Dualies are better than Splat Dualies. But hey, that's just my opinion. You're totally allowed to disagree. The last thing I want to cover in this video is, how would I change Dapple Dualies in a future patch? What would make them better? Obviously, I think giving them a little bit more range wouldn't hurt. A big emphasis on the little part, because if Dapples actually had decent range, they would probably be one of the best, if not the best weapon in the game. So yeah, just a little bit more range, maybe like 3 to 5% more. If Dapple Dualies are in Splatoon 3, which I'm pretty sure they will be, I hope they have somewhat better kits. Or in other words, give them a lethal bomb. The Dualie Squelchers are the best dually type in Splatoon 2. There's no arguing it. They're capable of so many things that none of the other dualies can do. In fact, at one point, the Dualie Squelchers were considered to be the best weapon in the entire game. So why is it that me, a dually specialist, doesn't like the Dualie Squelchers? Well, let's get into it. The Dualie Squelchers are such a weird weapon. I've said this in previous videos, but I've always considered these to be sort of its own weapon class, separate from the other 4 dualies. It possesses so many unique traits that no other dually has. First of all, the Dualie Squelchers have the most range of any dually in the game. Glooga Dualies can match this range, but only after a dodge roll, whereas the Dualie Squelchers maintain this range no matter what roll state you're in. Next up, they're the only dually that doesn't have end lag after performing a dodge roll. You simply just slide in the direction you're holding, whereas every other dually will be locked in place for a short amount of time. This alone gives the Dualie Squelchers a huge advantage, but there's one catch. They're the only dually that doesn't have an increased fire rate after performing a dodge roll. You see, the other 4 dualies will all start shooting a bit faster in its post-roll state, but with the Dualie Squelchers, it remains the same. I'll just say right now that this doesn't really hurt the Dualie Squelchers that much. It's one negative in exchange for so many positives. Speaking of positives, let's now talk about what I consider to be the stupidest thing that this weapon can do. What could that be? Well, I already think it's a little silly that there's no end lag after performing a dodge roll, but why on earth can this weapon do this? Oh my gosh, I hate it. The Dualie Squelchers have the ability to jump right after dodge rolling, and it will maintain the single reticle from its post-roll form. This gives the weapon so many mobility options, while still having the accuracy to kill consistently. The last positive that I want to go over is that the Squelchies are one of those weapons that can pseudo-kill if you run enough main power-up, because of course they are. If you run this much main power-up, you can deal 33.2 damage per shot, which will let you kill people in 3 shots majority of the time, when it's normally a 4-shot kill. If you want more information on how exactly this works, go check out this video. So the Dualie Squelchers must be amazing given how much I've been talking them up. Yeah, they really are. But at the time of this recording, they're not the most perfect weapon either. Let's get into the negatives. Remember how I said at one point that the Dualie Squelchers were considered to be the best weapon in the entire game? That meta was a little over a year ago, but since then, Nintendo has actually been smart and released multiple nerfs for this weapon, making it a little less broken. If only they'd give that same treatment to a certain other weapon in the game right now. But anyways, the most noticeable problem with the Dualie Squelchers is its ink consumption. You will run out of ink a lot with this thing, especially if you have a habit of spamming dodge rolls. Plus, if you're using the custom variant, you literally cannot use a splat bomb during fights. You can only throw one during downtime. If you use a splat bomb during a fight, you will run out of ink. That's why the vanilla Dualie Squelchers are actually considered to be the better variant now, because you can actually use your sub weapon and still have some ink left over. Plus, Tetra missiles are a top tier special. If you use the weapon enough, you'll get more accustomed to its ink tank and learn how to be more efficient with it, but this takes a lot of practice, and the weapon will still suffer due to how little you can dodge roll. Another nerf that the weapon received was to its accuracy when shooting normally. Before all of these nerfs, the weapon was extremely accurate without dodge rolling, so I think this was a great change. But even with these nerfs, the weapon is still pretty good. It's just not meta-defining like it once was. In order to succeed with this weapon now, you really need to put a lot of time into it, unlike before when your average shooter player could just flex to it and still perform well. So let's now talk about my personal opinion of the Dualie Squelchers. You heard me say in the beginning of the video that I personally don't like using this weapon. But why do I feel that way when it's clearly the best dualie of them all? Well, it's pretty simple actually. I don't like using this weapon because of how different it feels compared to other dualies. Again, I really don't consider the Squelchies to be a dualie. I consider them to be a shooter that can dodge roll. I know that's a strange analogy, but that really is how I feel. But let me reiterate, I'm not calling the Dualie Squelchers bad. They're really good. I just personally don't like using them. The Gloogas are the most underrated weapon in the dualie class, and they're honestly one of the most underrated weapons in the entire game. This thing just gets such little love for how much damage it can do, if put in the right hands. In fact, I'm willing to go as far as to say that the Glooga Dualies are the second best dualie in the game right now, right behind the Dualie Squelchers. But why do I think that the Gloogas deserve more praise than it currently gets? Well, let's hop into it. The trait that probably makes Glooga Dualies stick out the most is its damage output. When it's firing normally in its spread mode, it's a 3-shot kill. However, the Gloogas have horrible accuracy in its spread mode, so you really only want to use this for painting. If you're actually trying to kill someone, you're definitely going to want to dodge roll, for a few reasons. First, the 2 reticles will merge into one, improving your accuracy significantly. Your fire rate will also be increased, just like most of the other dualies. However, one benefit that the Glooga Dualies get from dodge rolling that no other dualie gets is actually a damage increase. When firing in turret mode, Gloogas turn into a 2-shot kill, making it the most powerful dualie damage-wise. It will also receive a slight range increase after a dodge roll, making it match the range of the Dualie Squelchers. With these benefits, the weapon sort of feels like a more mobile 96 cal, with a few exceptions. Speaking of exceptions, let's get into the negatives of this weapon. In my opinion, the worst trait about the Glooga Dualies is its lack of painting power. This is honestly the main thing that holds this weapon back. If it could just paint a bit better, it would see a lot more use. You can see that the ink spread from the droplets are pretty small, and if you combine that with this thing's slow fire rate, it just doesn't paint much. Gloogas also have the slowest dodge roll of the 5 dualie types. However, I don't consider this a huge issue, given that this thing has the range to sort of compensate for that. But it can definitely screw you in certain scenarios, and you'll feel it if you're facing an NPU damage out weapon like a K-Pro or a Bamboozler. The weapon also has questionable accuracy, even in its turret mode, but as long as you make sure that you're dodge rolling in fights, you should be fine most of the time. The last negative that I'll talk about is its ink consumption, but again, this isn't a big issue. The more you play with the weapon, the more you'll learn about how to be efficient with it. You can also run some ink saver main or ink recovery up to make things a little easier, but don't run too much. While Glooga's ink consumption isn't the greatest, it still feels a lot better than the Dualie Squelchers. So now, let's talk about the kits. The Glooga Dualies have 3 variants, one of which is very strong. That of course being the Glooga Dualies Deco. Whenever Glooga Dualies get any competitive use, this is usually the one that you're gonna see. The reason for this is because the kit complements the main weapon so well. Splash Wall is probably the best sub-weapon that Glooga Dualies could have. It just feels like it was designed for them. If you throw a splash wall and then dodge roll into it, you end up perfectly aligned behind the splash wall, protecting you while firing in turret mode. This kit also has Baller as its special, and while Baller is considered to be pretty terrible right now, it can definitely still help out Gloogas if they're in a tight spot. The vanilla Glooga Dualies have Ink Mine as its sub-weapon, and Ink Jet as its special. This is definitely the worst of the 3 variants, since Ink Mine basically has no synergy with the main weapon at all. However, Inkjet does, which is sad because if this thing just had a lethal bomb, it might see a lot more use. The final kit is the Kensa Glooga Dualies, and these are my personal favorite of the 3 variants. Having both Fizzy Bomb and Ink Armor, you could argue that the Kensa Gloogas have the best kit in the entire game. So why is it such an underused weapon? Well, it's simple. The kit just doesn't have great synergy with the main weapon. The Glooga Dualies themselves are an aggressive weapon, which is why the most common gear that's ran on the other 2 variants is quick respawn. But Fizzy Bomb and Ink Armor aren't exactly aggressive, so you can see where the issue lies here. I will say this though, the Kensa Glooga Dualies are a lot better than people say they are. I use this kit a lot in my competitive days, and I got some great results with it. Having the ability to switch between being aggressive and being defensive is something that not a lot of weapons can do, and it can lead to some really interesting gear builds. So, as I said in the beginning of the video, I think that the Glooga Dualies are extremely underrated. Sure, their painting power is pretty abysmal, and the weapon itself feels pretty slow, but it has the range and damage output to put up decent fights against a lot of common weapons right now, such as Dualie Squelchers and frontline shooters. Not to mention, the Glooga Deco kit has Splash Wall, which helps out the main weapon even more, and it can assist in dealing with longer ranged weapons. Plus, I'm definitely not the only person to have this opinion. I've seen many players on Twitter also express that they think that Glooga Dualies are capable of much more. And speaking of that, there actually is a player who's proven what Glooga Dualies are capable of. A Japanese content creator who goes by the name Tiramisu mains the Glooga Dualies Deco, and he has won not 1, but 2 recent major Japanese tournaments, which is no easy feat. By the way, if you guys want to check out Tiramisu and his epic Glooga gameplay, I'll link his channel in the description. Well guys, this is it. The final episode of my 5-part series. We've discussed Splat Dualies, Dapple Dualies, Dualie Squelchers, and Glooga Dualies. But there's still one left. If you've watched my channel at all, then you'll know that I saved the best for last. It's time to talk about the Tetra Dualies. I remember when the Tetra Dualies first came out. I was a Splattershot and 96 Gal main at the time. I wasn't even really interested in Dualies back then, but something about the Tetras just really caught my attention. Whether it was its ability to dodge roll 4 times, or just its super cool design, I really wanted to try it out. And let's just say, from that day onwards, I became a Dualie enthusiast. There's a little bit of Chase 24/7 lore for you guys, so I hope you enjoyed that. Being my main weapon, I naturally have a lot to say about the Tetra Dualies. In fact, I had so much to say that I actually already made a fully fleshed out 35-minute guide, which goes into detail on how the weapon works, as well as tips, tricks, strategies, and even gear recommendations. So if you haven't seen that yet, definitely be sure to check that out. A link will be in the description. But yeah, since I've already made an in-depth guide, I'm not going to be going into specifics on the weapon here like I did in the previous 4 episodes, but rather, I'm just going to be giving my opinions on them. How do I think Tetras fare in the current meta? Do I think they're overpowered? What would I change about them? I'm going to give you the answers to all of these questions, and more, right now. Around the time when Tetra Dualies were first released, they were considered to be really good. Their mobility combined with their aggressive playstyle was able to deal really well with the shorter ranged meta at the time. They were so good that I would constantly see them at the top of Japanese weapon tier lists. But as I'm sure you guys know, once main power-up was introduced into the game, Tetras, as well as most of the entire Dualie class, took a turn for the worse. And it saddens me to say that Tetras were never really able to regain their former glory. In the K-Pro meta, Tetras were borderline unplayable. That was the worst of the worst. Since then, Tetras have gotten better, but there are still so many prevalent weapons in the current meta that absolutely destroy them. These include Squeezer, Nautilus, 52 Gal, and I'm not even gonna say its name. But yeah, my point is that Tetras still struggle a lot in terms of matchups. Plus, it's not just that. The weapons kits are also a massive setback. The way that competitive Splatoon 2 is played right now heavily revolves around special usage. Tetra Dualies struggle with this because they pretty much don't have a special. The Dark Tetras have Splashdown, which if you're facing any high-level player, is basically useless. The Light Tetras have Auto Bomb Rush, which is still pretty bad. It's definitely the worst Bomb Rush special in the game, but it's certainly better than Splashdown. Plus, the Bomb Rush on Light Tetras allows it to do the Bomb Rush tech, which lets you dodge roll 8 times. If you don't know what I'm talking about, check out this video. But anyway, my point is that Tetra Dualies are not broken. In fact, I think they could use a few buffs. What I think the weapon will benefit the most from right now is an accuracy buff, mainly for its spread mode. When you're strafing, I'm not lying when I say that I'm pretty sure this thing has the worst accuracy in the entire game. Not to mention, its accuracy was made even worse with the nerf it received in the 4.4.0 update, which reduced the hitbox size for its spread mode shots, similar to the Splat Dualies. So they should at least undo that nerf, but a general buff to its RNG wouldn't hurt. As for what else I would want to change about the weapon, it's hard to say. Of course, there are plenty of things that I would like them to buff, but it's difficult to say whether they would be balanced or not. For example, I've seen quite a few people talk about how if you get a splat during a roll chain, you should be granted an extra roll. While I personally would love this, I do think that it might be a little busted. If you guys have any other ideas for potential buffs that Tetras could get, feel free to share them in the comments. I'd love to chat with you guys about this. So with all this talk about how Tetra Dualies aren't very strong right now, why do I still use them? Why do I base my entire channel off of a weapon that's extremely hard to use and is often looked down upon by the competitive community? Well, the answer is simple. They're just fun. They're so much fun. It's so satisfying to roll around the map, holding forward and wreaking havoc all game. I said this in the Tetra guide, but I'll say it again. I've played with a lot of weapons in this game, but nothing gives me the adrenaline rush that Tetra Dualies do. Part of this might be just because of the playstyle of Tetras. I'm not really a fan of the meta in Splatoon 2 right now. I don't like waiting around for ink armor or other specials to coordinate a push. I don't like playing passively or far away. I like holding forward. I like being aggressive and opening things up for my team. So I guess that's why I love Tetra Dualies so much, because they don't follow the norm. When I play competitive games, I don't like using what everyone else uses. I like to be unique. I like to stand out. And I promise you, if you're a Tetra Dualie player, competitive or casual, you do stand out. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. At this point, I've given you my thoughts on every Dualie weapon in Splatoon 2. I definitely had a lot to say, but given that this is the weapon class that I specialize in, it can't be too surprising. Before we put this series to rest, let's quickly recap. First, we talked about the Splat Dualies, which I said were my least favorite Dualies. One quick thing I want to point out is that since the video came out, a patch was released for Splatoon 2, which actually buffed the ink consumption of Splat Dualies. If you watched the video, you might remember me saying that ink consumption was one of the Splat Dualies' biggest weaknesses. So did the buff change my opinion on them? Nope. They do feel a bit better to use, but it still doesn't fix any of the other issues with them, such as slow dodge roll speed and a poor damage output. If you try really hard, you can make Splat Dualies work, but there are so many weapons that do its job better. Next up, we discussed the Dapple Dualies, which are one of my favorites. I think these things are underrated, since their speed and kits often aren't taken advantage of. However, this proved to be a pretty controversial take, but I still stand by it. We then discussed the Dualie Squelchers, which are hands down the best dualie in the game. But despite this, I actually expressed that I don't really like using this weapon, because the traits that make it the best dualie are things that no other dualie has, such as no end lag after a roll. Plus, this weapon definitely isn't as good as it once was, but overall, it's still really solid. The Glooga Dualies are what I consider to be the most underrated dualie. Time and time again, people have proven what this weapon is capable of, yet it still sees such little use due to its lack of paint. But I do think, with the right comp, this can be worked around, enabling an extremely powerful weapon. And lastly, the Tetra Dualies, my favorite dualie. While this thing certainly isn't the greatest, its unique dodge roll mechanics just make it so much fun to play, and it's definitely the most aggressive dualie, if that's how you like to play the game. It's the most difficult dualie to use, but if you just put in the time, I guarantee you won't regret it. I want to thank you all so much for sticking through this series with me. Making it was a ton of fun, even if I was pretty slow with it. As for what's next, I'm not exactly sure. School is starting soon for me, so I'm not sure what my availability is going to be like. I may still have time to play Splatoon and make videos, but I also might not. We'll just have to wait and see. But what I can tell you is that I will still be here, and I do have a lot of stuff planned. Once again, thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all next time.